this is our last meeting. Welcome, y'all. Do grab some pizza. What we're up to tonight is, remember on Friday we sent you the draft list of all the infrastructure projects that this group has identified and prioritized to be supported by the 2016 SPLOST funds. So we're going to review and talk about, our homework was to identify any concerns or questions. So we're going to do that. And then we have a draft press release that we want to share with you and ask you whether there are ways to strengthen it regarding our work. And then we want to reflect on people's individual experience on the committee on behalf of Douglas County. And we'll do that in two ways. There will be a written thing so you can be quiet about it. And then I'm ready to put people into small groups depending on how many people there are in terms of whether small groups make sense. So that's what we're up to, and we will move along. And so I'm prepared to be 2 hours, and yet it may not be 2 hours if it doesn't work that way. So we aren't gonna drag it out. Let's say this about that. So, so moving the chair along, maybe somebody will like it. Welcome everybody. As you come in, there's pizza over there, and it is for you. And so, in fact, that is the agenda is opening with pizza. And what we're going to do first is approve the September 8th meeting minutes. Then we're going to sort of do the smallest of memory lanes about how we came together. This group came together July 26th and what's happened since then. And then there's going to be a check-in, which is very specifically going to be inviting you to report, quote unquote, on your homework about looking at the draft list of projects. And that will lead us into a Q&A. So we'll find out what's on your minds and what, if anything, you've heard from friends, neighbors, etc. And we'll turn that into a Q&A. And that will be sort of the sum for our adoption of the list of infrastructure projects. Then we'll step back and we'll ask you to fill out a process evaluation, and then we'll show you the draft press release, and then we'll go into small groups to ask you to talk with each other about some specifics in regard to both of those too. And we'll share those, and then there's a final, just as we've been checking in, we'll be checking out, hearing from each of you a sentence about what this has been for you, or what you like, whatever. And then we will give you a giant thank you, because this has been a lot of work in a very short period of time. And I'm totally impressed. I'm totally impressed that we actually have done the job as I understood we were given. So that is my opening thing about tonight's objectives and agenda. So let's start first to approve last week's minutes. That was a very full meeting where we really did a lot of things. Would anyone like to?
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay, great. And all, that was Forrest. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, great. Okay, so let's go to, and I'm recognizing that we don't have name tags tonight, I just noticed. And I hope that you all remember each other almost as much as I remember, or maybe more than I remember, I'm not sure. At any rate, I'm hoping that we can go around and offer your name to refresh us, and then any concern or question that you have or you have heard about the draft list of projects. And what I'll do is write that down and then put it on the famous purple cloth. And so I want to hear from each person, and if somebody's concern or question is similar to somebody else's, I will put them together. Otherwise, we will have a list of questions and concerns that are completely individual, and we'll address them that way. Okay? Al, may I start with you?
Yes, ma'am. I'm Al Dodds from District 4. One of the questions or concerns that I've been hearing a lot from my district is they don't understand why we're wanting to put money into the sidewalks at the schools when that supposedly is to be covered by the schools. And I couldn't properly explain the answer to them on that.
Okay, so why money for sidewalks at schools, shouldn't they pay for them?
Right.
Okay.
And I couldn't properly explain it.
Okay.
I'm not a school board person,
Okay,
so.
and we're not gonna do anything, we're just taking the questions right now so that we can find out effectively like what's in the house. So,
I'm Susan Arnett, District 3, and one of the questions was very similar to Al's that I heard was, why are we doing the paving and stuff on SPLOST instead of the county covering that?
okay, paving on SPLOST money versus county dollars. Okay, thank you.
No, sorry.
I'm John Sell, District 3, and again, it was paving, but it was concerned that not just the thoroughfares, they get paved every 5 to 7 years, but there's a lot of residential neighborhoods that have not been touched since they were completed 20 years ago. And a lot of those roads were turned over to the county. The county has not resurfaced those roads, so can we use some of the dollars towards resurfacing the neighborhood roads as well?
Okay, why not repaving, resurface, residential areas?
Right.
Okay, and I'm gonna make these separate questions unless you tell me different. Next.
Mel Hughes, District 2. One of the questions that I've heard asked on more than one occasion is if we have a new fire department built for, it's going to be close to Thornton Road, how is that going to affect our coverage over in District 2, most importantly, in our area where I live, over in Anawake Trails?
So, to shorten that, it's how will
we have enough manpower to be able to man the fire trucks or fire and safety?
manpower for trucks with new fire station. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
Great, thank you. Next.
Millicent Nation, District 3. And the question has been that if the SPLOST does not pass, will any of these projects be completed? Will anything get done? Is there money in the budget for it later? In the regular budget that could handle some of it?
So if SPLOST doesn't pass, is there any money in budget for
Any of the projects?
any of the projects? Okay. All right. Okay.
Cartoons Harris, District 2. I think mine was more of a general, what I was hearing more was, are we representing the people instead of our own personal interests? Are we, when we are in here deciding, are we thinking about more than just what affects us? specifically, are we thinking about the area or the people that we are representing?
Right, and you are reminding me that as soon as we get these lists of questions, I want to remind us what our goals were and what our guidelines were that we created. So thank you for that.
Michael Young, District 4. The couple people that had the biggest grief with this were on the multipurpose senior center. They were disappointed it got such a big chunk of the rec budget, and thought that that should have gone to soccer fields.
So rec center, too much money. What about soccer fields? Okay,
All right, my name is Brandon Penniman. One of the questions that I've written down here was if SPLOST does pass, when do we expect for these projects to begin? And when are we expecting completion? Like, do we have set completion times or dates?
okay. Thank you. Morris?
My name is Forrest Johnstone. Mine wasn't so much as a concern as some people said, well, if it passes and fire and EMS has 32% and everything that they're asking for is already covered, are there additional items that need to be added as money became available? So if there was like a larger amount than what was requested for in those funds, what would those funds go for?
So if the SPLOST passes and the fire EMS
Oh,
is covered,
So I guess each one of the categories has a spillover that if we have this much, these are going to get covered. If we have additional, this will get covered, and additional, this will. But fire and EMS, the way we kind of looked at it, everything was, we said that their amount will cover that. So do they have spillover items that they also need, or that money can be allocated for?
or need if there's money. Okay. I'm gonna put this here, it's not related to that as far as I know. Yes.
Mark Stir, District 2, and the discussions I had, one was around the economic development category. There seemed to be a large amount of money allocated with no real specifics as to how it's going to actually be used and seen.
And so the question is,
There's a large amount of money allocated with no specifics around how it's going to actually be used or consumed.
So it's more of a concern.
Yes. And the other discussions I had were around the intersection selection, which we've already hashed out in this meeting, about what is approved or what meets within the standard, what doesn't meet within the standard. But they added the question about could roadway improvements include passing lanes for busy roads like Riverside, passing lanes to allow people to get around trucks and what have you, if you're not going to do all of that.
so what about passing lanes for SPLOST coverage? Okay. Now, before we go and ask a combination of Mark and Randy to address these, is there anything else that we need to address? Okay. So, they
I'm
seem.
sorry, you know, I do have one thing.
Yeah.
This is gonna go before the commissioners, and then they're gonna vote up or down, make changes, whatever the case may be. Presumably, we can get the results of their vote, or will we know, or?
Yes,
Okay,
So, Mark,
it's
what are
like
your-
last time, everybody will get, everybody will know.
okay.
So, Mark, do you want to come down and just sort of take these as you?
Tina, did you want to go over objectives now before you?
Thank you. You know, thank you for paying attention.
I've been in one or two meetings before.
What was that?
I said, I've been in one or two meetings before.
All right, so the goals for our fine group were to review the prospective project lists, to select and prioritize the projects, and make recommendations to the Board of Commissioners, and that's what we've been doing. What we agreed that would be our working guidelines, that we support our decisions as a group. Once we've agreed on a project, we neither go out and promote nor go back on our decisions. The alternates participate fully and vote only when their district member is absent. We make points, not speeches. We proactively think of the alternative to what we think is best. We seek to understand why a given project is a priority for another. We respect each person's view. We hope we make the best decision for the county. We consider the county, not the neighborhood. We are allowed to have a clear and elaborate understanding of others' views. So as we look back on the time that we've had together, you know, one of our questions is, does this group feel that we followed the rules that we basically created? So let's talk, because actually Cortez mentioned that as a suggestion. Let's talk right now and address some of these questions.
I'll skip the first couple and I'll let Randy get those on the paving and the sidewalks. As far as the question about enough manpower for station number 9, station number 9 would have to be manned. As far as Anawake, it should increase your coverage because the station at Riverside is actually closest to Anawake, station 6. So they wouldn't be traveling to Thornton Road as much as they would, you see what I mean? So they would have more help.
So let's take them as you. I keep. it's not
SPLOST
gonna be-
doesn't pass, is there any money in the budget for any of these projects? Yes, there is, but on a very limited basis. We're in the, right now, department heads have submitted their budgets. I haven't seen those yet. We're having budget hearings starting next week. So by November, we should have a better feel on how much money there is in the budget for capital improvements, but there, nowhere on this level is there, that much money. So
Yeah,
it could be very few.
Would the available money be earmarked to the digital radio system first?
It won't touch it.
They won't tell.
Is there a projection?
Oh, so there's not even anywhere close to 16, 17 million.
Close. If that project went forward without the SPLOST, we would have to borrow money. Yes, sir.
Is there a projection, like, would you assume the budget is gonna be? Is there, y'all have it projected?
70, 80 million. That includes salaries, that includes utilities, that includes, includes everything. Yes, sir.
So, just for clarity's sake, on my part, SPLOST money came from a tax that we put on the people, right?
Well, there-
1 cent sales tax that we put on
Sales tax,
people, right?
yes.
So, that money's not already here, or are they like matching the money or something?
Previously, the previous one stopped in April, and that was for the jail. It was a 5-year just for the jail.
Right.
That's it.
So this one,
Right now, we do not have that extra penny.
This
oh,
money
okay.
wouldn't even start to come in until April of 2017.
So right now, we're trying to get people to say that I'll take on another tax. Ah,
I'm a
now,
penny.
it's-
Tell you guys,
Good reason.
to
I
get
thought
it
we
back
had
to
the
where it
money.
was whenever the jail SPLOST was in place,
Got it.
which ended in April, which answers.
The EMS one? If SPLOST passes, when do they begin and when will they be
Yeah,
complete?
exactly.
All right, so it's for 6 years, it begins in April, and when would it end? 6 years later?
6 years later. And there'd be some spillover for a couple of months, and then there would also be, as far as some of the projects at the end, would carry on past that 6 years.
So we'll be spending the money as we collect the money through the tax?
Yes. Yeah, as we go. As far as are we representing the people or our areas, that's the answer for y'all to make, but it should be, you know, the entire county. That should be the answer.
And our attempt to mix you up in small groups so that you weren't talking to all District 1, all District 2, was an effort to have you think of everybody's concerns. So let me just ask you, do you all feel that what came out is represented? We tried also with the map to show that we were doing intersections across. I mean, we've done what we can to sort of feed back what your choices are and where they would be. So how do you all feel about
I
that?
think the majority of the county was well served. Not everybody got everything they wanted, but that's, you have to compromise. There wasn't money for everything.
So this, you
Yes.
feel?
Yeah, the groups that I work with, totally opposite from where I live, but we came to an agreement that works best for the county, so.
I don't think we even talked about what county.
What we lived.
Yeah, what district
Yeah.
we're in.
We did.
Yeah, I was actually sort of surprised to hear you mention your districts, you know, going around tonight, because it's sort of like, oh, because we've been in the county. Okay, all right, pick another one.
As far as the rec center versus soccer fields, y'all recommended rec center, multipurpose center. Yes, soccer fields was another option. That could be changed by the commissioners, could not, you know, that's up to them. But right now, your recommendation is for the multipurpose recreation center and senior center. Now, we are doing, since we're talking about that, we are doing some research on it, which is another item later on in the process, but I'll go ahead and mention it while we're talking about it. We have talked to our consultant, Lowe's and Associates. They're taking 11.2 million that y'all allocated for that, and they're doing concept drawings. They're gonna tell us what we can and can't do square footage wise with, one facility, two facilities, you know, they're gonna give us some options there, but they are working it. They're working on that now.
And are we doing any demographic studies to figure out where the best place in the county would be from a
Geographically,
use?
it's Lithia Springs. But
That's already been
there
chosen.
was some desire for it to be on the west side of the county rather than the east side of the county, so.
That was one of the things I think that we had
So that's
talked
to be
about.
decided.
Okay.
Yeah. Pastor Lane, let Randy take care of that, he's not on development, I'll let Randy take care of that. The SPLOST passes and fire EMF is covered with the 32 million. And we have spillover, if we receive more revenues, okay, at this point, more money can be spent on fire EMS at that point. There may be other projects, but if you have projects, say DOT has projects, they go down that intersection list and they're on the 8th intersection. You know, we have a total of 11. Money can go into another category if you've completed what's on the list for another category. So it can go into different categories. And then, you know, some of the fire EMS noticed, you know, they are estimates, so they could come in a lot higher, could come in lower. So just depends. Randy, you want to tackle these?
All right, Mark, could you go,
Go.
since a lot of the equipment is replacement, could you actually accelerate some of the replacement of equipment if you had leftover dollars for fire and EMS as well? Or-
Yeah, that's a possibility. But yeah, most all of it's replacement except for the Station 9.
Right. Can I ask one more question?
Yes, sir.
I guess dealing with the bridges, and I hate I missed the portion that was kind of dealing with Riverside Parkway, but are the bridges and the roads been ramped up for the coming of more trucks? Are we anticipating more trucks, more of that type industry, and more specifically Riverside?
I don't know right now if we are or not. I know Medline was, not Medline's the last one.
Okay, he's
As far as some of the stuff we're doing with the study, the Thornton Road Corridor study, actually deals with some less intrusive development than what we've seen in the past with some of these big boxes, these wholesale places.
But as far as the master plan, I mean, I know we said they had a master plan. Do they plan on, and she was, is that supposed to be like the corridor for the trucking facilities and all that? Or did we have
You're
a
asking
plan?
me if it's going to be a specifically designated truck route. I can't answer that, and the answer would be determined based on what our ultimate network turns out to be. You know, here's the reality, here's the facts that we have to face. The tonnage of freight moving in and out of Georgia and through the metropolitan Atlanta area is forecasted to increase by about 78% over the next 25 to 30 years. We're gonna see more freight vehicles, no question about it. The deepening of the Port of Savannah will have an impact. But we're working every day to look at freight mobility issues. The state just did a State Route 6 access management plan, looked at freight and freight mobility issues in the corridor. There's a truck advantage lanes project that's underway right now. That's about, I think it's a $39 million project that GDOT has on drawing boards that's being developed. Our own study that we talked to you about as it relates to economic development in the State Route 6 Thornton Road study area. One of the big issues with that visioning plan is to look at land use and transportation and how it's interrelated. I mean, we certainly recognize that we don't need trucks traveling through areas around the county that aren't suitable for truck and freight traffic. But part of this can be addressed in the way that we set up the infrastructure. And that's why we want to do we want to look at some of these infrastructure projects that come out of the economic development studies to try and address some of those issues. The Riverside Parkway is a major arterial road. It all folds back to land use. You know, if you don't approve the land uses for those types of freight vehicles, then you're not going to see them, you know, scattered throughout. The state law controls how they can travel to some extent based on weights and overall weights and axle weights. If their destination is to a certain area, they have to take the shortest route to the freeway system. Depends on where their destination is. So, I mean, that's a very subjective question. I can't tell you exactly, you know, what 20 years from now will look like, but I can tell you that we're going to see significant change in freight activity, but there's going to be fewer cars on the road. There's going to be, I'm not going to go into all the technology, but things are changing very rapidly, and you're going to see different models for freight distribution. You're going to see, you've heard what Amazon, some of these other major big box fulfillment centers are doing. They're gonna find new ways to get goods and materials moved about and to people at the end of the last mile of the trip.
But there are still economic development sites on Riverside that are developed but not, there's no usage for them. I mean, Rooker's got 3 sites next to Gordon Foods sitting in there that could very easily put another distribution type facility in there with trucks. So, I mean.
They're already zoned, what it's saying, they're already zoned.
Right.
Oh, it's already zoned for.
It's already zoned for, yes, there are places.
Well, I guess the people within that area that I'm here for, most of them, it's like they're against, you know, I mean, we have a lot of trucks already over there, and it's just gonna get worse. They was talking about passing lanes for the trucks, and increase the traffic, the speed of the traffic and all that. We've spending money on the bridges, I know we talked about that, to bucket the bridges so they can handle the trucks. And it's like, I guess our question was, why is it that that's the only industry we're pretty much going after? What is that turning that into, another Fulton Industrial?
Yeah, like Chris said, and I don't remember if you were at that meeting, when Chris Pumpkin was here with the Economic Development Authority, is that we're trying to steer away from the Fulton Industrial type development. Which is part of the reason, you know, that's part of what this Thornton Road study
But Thornton Road Street doesn't include Riverside.
It includes Parks and Riverside.
That's not what he mentioned when he was here, though, so.
If you look.
I'm not saying,
If you look at the study
I'm just saying
area.
when he had the conversation on that day, he excluded Riverside.
This includes
The section, not the whole of Riverside Parkway, it doesn't go all the way to 92. The study area does not. The study area covers a small portion adjacent to Thornton Road.
over the Sweetwater Creek State Park, which is above it, although Sweetwater Creek's above it, but essentially that line.
What I thought I saw was everything above Riverside Road.
Well,
Now,
I
it
can
might have
tell-
been, I'll go back and look at the information. but
Well,
it doesn't seem to
I
include
mean,
that.
I can tell you that we just had a meeting with the consultant earlier this week.
I'm not disagreeing with you, I'm saying that what I remember, so.
Okay, well, I just want to give you the latest information. The meeting that we had with the consultant was specifically had to do with some of the transportation infrastructure. And Riverside is one of the roads that was talked about.
One really quick question, and I don't know if y'all be able to answer, but is there a possibility that MARTA could be extended out this way, the train system?
Not without approval from the state legislature. But we are looking at other systems that would serve the multimodal needs of the county. MARTA being extended into Douglas County would be a very, very expensive endeavor. And, you know, it's, we are looking at commuter rail, longer range, but as it stands right now, we're trying to develop a multimodal system that can be supported today and try to connect people to the other systems that are available in the region.
Thank you.
Okay, so, why can't funds, for sidewalks at the schools, shouldn't the schools pay for them? The answer to that question is basically state law. They cannot use school dollars on roadway infrastructure, off their sites. Now, they can spend dollars for, access management and immediate site improvements if they needed left turns to get people in and out of their site, but they can't go a mile down the road or half a mile down the road.
And they can run from the road to the building.
Okay, all right.
Through the limits of their frontage, yeah.
That's good enough.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure. Why
Why
paving
repaving?
dollars on SPLOST funds versus county funds? Well, the short answer to that is, there's not enough money to, remember when I showed you the bell curve and the relationship between the cost of a road over time versus paying for it today or earlier in that deterioration cycle? Most arterial roads, with the traffic loads that we have, they're gonna have to be resurfaced on a typical cycle of about 10 to 12 years. Most of the subdivision streets with the lighter traffic, not the heavy loads, not the starting and stopping conditions, they only have to be resurfaced probably double that cycle. But I also told you that we're not supplanting what we do on an annual basis into the SPLOST program. We're gonna continue to do resurfacing at the levels that we currently do today out of the general fund budget. We're simply gonna shift that money over and do all the residential roads and the local roads with the LMIG money and the general fund budget money that we're using today. We're gonna take the SPLOST money, if the SPLOST is approved, and we're gonna try and get ahead of the curve on some of these major arterials and collector roads that require having to be resurfaced about double what the other roads have to be resurfaced.
Remind us what LMIG is, I can't remember.
It's a local maintenance improvement agreement. It's basically a program that provides state dollars based on lane miles and population in the local jurisdiction.
For example, this year, we're spending $5 million plus, I don't remember what we spent so far with county forces. but $6 million on resurfacing this year alone with no SPLOST.
And this was an exceptional year. That's typically not the case. We typically spend about $3 million a year. But, you know, to make you better understand the issue of using this to get a surge as a part of the SPLOST program, if the SPLOST program doesn't pass, then I'm gonna have to go back and reconstitute our program, and we're gonna have to combine local roads and arterial and collector roads all out of that same $3 million annual pot. So what that does is it doesn't get us ahead of that bell curve. What we're trying to do is get caught up. This is not uncommon. Practically every jurisdiction in the country is struggling with roadway infrastructure maintenance and preservation of their existing systems. I can tell you there's roads in the Midwest where policymakers have literally gone back and ground up roads and turned them into dirt roads because they didn't have money to continue to pave them. So this is very important. We think it's the right mechanism to get ahead of the curve and save ourselves some money over the long term, and save the taxpayers some money. And then the other part of it is all the local and residential roads that will be done under the program, or that we will continue to do under the LMIG program, most of those are going to be done by our forces with our own staff. So there's a difference between having asphalt dropped in a truck and you putting it down with your staff than there is having a contractor come in with all of his forces and doing it with his equipment and his people. Now, the next question I know you're probably going to ask me is, why don't we do all of them that way? Well, because it gets so labor intensive. You have to run paving trains, the traffic control is much higher, and I don't have enough staff to do those types of roads. So I hope that answers your question. I'll be glad to go further if I need to.
I was just gonna say, Randy, a lot of what we're seeing with our pavement now has to do with the floods that we had several years ago too, if I'm not mistaken. A lot of the problems that we're seeing is a result of that flooding, isn't it?
A good bit of it is, particularly in low-lying areas. I mean, water infiltration is just like the roof on your house. Water infiltration is a road's worst enemy. Once water starts to infiltrate underneath the base of the road, and you start to get the subgrade starts to become moist and has issues with that moisture infiltration, then that's when the roads start to fail at a higher rate. What about passing lanes for SPLOST coverage? Well, let me say this first of all. Passing lanes typically are not utilized in urbanized areas that frequently. They're more used in rural areas where you have long trips. I think Riverside's maybe 6 miles long. Am I right in that range? But when you have platooning of traffic with traffic signals in urbanized areas, the idea is to keep traffic at platoon levels. Now, passing lanes effectively are widening of the road. So if you look around the county system, there are no passing lanes in the county with the exception of some of the state routes. There's some passing lanes on State Route 92 north of the city, but those passing lanes are going to be gone once the State Route 92 project goes in. It'll be a multi-lane road. So while there might be the perception that in an urbanized area you got to wait on the guy in front of you to keep the traffic flowing efficiently, it's not really a good investment to put money into passing lanes. If your volume to capacity ratio is such on a roadway that you have that kind of problem, then it's time to start looking at actually widening the road. Now, I will tell you that we've looked at Riverside Parkway It's posted 55 miles an hour. I'm looking now at whether or not we need to lower the speed limit. We're gonna run it through US speed limits and make some decisions about that. The other thing is, we're gonna be probably in the near future putting another traffic signal out there at Rock House Road. Once again, that part of more urbanized environment where you have stop and go conditions. My answer is that as a transportation director in this county, I wouldn't recommend to the board that they do this because I don't think it would be a reasonable way to invest money given, the system that we have. I hope that answers your question. I'll be glad to answer any follow-up questions.
Well, when the questions I presented were questions that were supposed to be putting anyone on the spot to where you had to answer them during this meeting. You asked us what were the concerns or questions that people brought to our attention in discussing it. That's what those questions were.
Okay, well,
And our idea was, if you heard them, let's talk to the people to get some
Yeah,
kind
good
of answers, if they're answers. So
I just
it
want to make
wasn't.
sure that you understand it wasn't an attempt to put you on the spot.
no, I understand. Yeah.
Thank you, thank you.
Is this, we got one more?
Yeah. Economic development.
Okay, if we go back to the economic development, remember, we told you that we weren't asking you to approve the money. The money, the amount of $10 million was already approved for the economic development category. What we wanted this committee to decide upon was whether or not those two areas where we've got lacking infrastructure to achieve a vision and a plan that we need to achieve, to be more diverse, to be more sustainable, to try and get land uses that will be more vibrant in these areas and do it in a way that we're ahead of the growth curve. Typically what happens is the growth curve's like this, the infrastructure falls underneath it. Ideally, in a perfect world, you want the growth curve and the infrastructure curve to run parallel, right beside each other. That rarely happens. But in a case where you can do that with additional dollars, then you have a better opportunity to shape the vision. We use the term put some skin in the game. Shape the vision and let the infrastructure coincide with the development activities that you're getting pressure for. It's called development concurrency. And, I said earlier, land use and transportation are integrated. This is a perfect opportunity for us to let land use and transportation work together rather than to let the land use drive the transportation plans or the transportation plans drive the land use plans. Does everybody understand that? Okay.
Thank you. So any final questions? Let me just say where we are. Basically, we've come up with the list of projects bit by bit. We wanted to answer any questions that you all have because this is the list that you are associated with and I hope excited about. So are there any other questions before we basically applaud ourselves for having come up with these lists? And then we're gonna move on to sort of step back and say, how was this process and how can we improve it and how are we gonna write about it and stuff like that?
I have a question.
I can't.
Oh, you can't?
This is, I'm talking to the people who
I
are
was
the
just wondering
committee.
if this was the list was available to the public anywhere.
It is.
It
It will be, yeah, but we're giving it out, but this is not a public meeting.
Oh, it says on your website that this was open to the public.
It's open to the public, but you can't ask questions.
I see.
So,
Sorry.
thank you. Yes, I do too.
So, anything else before we, is it going once?
I
Yeah.
would like to say that those questions that we've all heard from folks, that may be a good place to start when you start trying to sell the SPLOST. Start addressing those questions ahead of time to say, if anybody has a question about whether you want to vote for this or not, here's some.
Well, this is very helpful. I mean, and in fact, when we get to, for instance, talking about the draft press release, if you all have some ideas that would connect, and again, press release can't be forever, and yet, so how can we get out information? So, anything else before we basically applaud ourselves for having come up with the list in an amazingly short period of time?
Do we need to officially approve it before we apply?
We had conversations about that. And I'll just say, that basically, you've approved each piece along the way. So we were trying to figure out whether you really needed to, because each piece has been approved. If you would like to acclaim.
Move to approve the list.
Second.
Third, fourth, and fifth.
Fourth and fifth. All right, so everyone who is approving the list, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone who is opposed? Wow, can we applaud ourselves? Awesome. Okay, now, let me hand out, this is a questionnaire. I'm gonna hand it out and sort of just walk through the questions to make sure that, that the questions are clear. It's a basically ranking from disagree strongly all the way to agree strongly. You've seen these before. So I'm glad that I participated. Having an outside facilitator produced a fair and equitable process. It was useful to have homework before the various subject areas. We were given sufficient information before our decision making. The project selection processes we used made sense. The committee membership of 12 with up to 8 alternates permitted was large enough for us to represent the needs of all Douglas County citizens. And so you can say whatever you say on number 6, and then we want to know in the future, how many members and how many alternates would you recommend per district? So, should this happen again, or when there's a SPLOST in 6 years, or whenever a SPLOST might be proposed again, what do you think is the right number? And then finally, this is the how might the process be improved for a future SPLOST or other citizen endeavor. Let me explain the difference. These are what you can write on your own. Then what we're going to do in a few minutes is we're going to have you go talk in small groups about what you want to say as a group about how things could be improved. So these are, if there's anything that you didn't feel comfortable, for instance, saying in a small group, please write it all down, because it will really help us for the future. To say nothing of understanding where we've been.
Can I give a suggestion?
Yes.
Veggie pizza next. No, just.
And there's a cheese, there's a cheese.
All right, we'll remember that next time.
Or you can take that Supreme and pull the meat off of it.
Oh, it's potato, that's the thing.
That leaves you green peppers.
The green peppers.
Are we turning these in?
All right, duly noted, Cortez.
Yeah, Brandon, yes, Brandon.
Now, Mark, do you have the press release? I don't seem to have it. So as you're finishing up your remarks, we're handing out the draft press release, so we'll have a little bit more, individual reading time so you can look it over. And then when we go into small groups for the last time, you'll be able to sort of talk both about the process and what you said and what you want to say as a group back to us, and then give suggestions for the press release.
How long was the process? About 6 weeks?
We met July 26th to choose people, And then we met August 18th, August 25th, September 1st, September 8th, and we are here at September 15th.
And the process for that started like June 7th. So, yeah, it's been going on for a while.
This, whatever. So just share with each other in a small group, it's just you chickens, what did you think of the process? And then, as a small group, summarize 3 points from your conversation that you want to share out with the group. Okay, so it's a way for you to talk with each other. And then on the press release, offer 1 or 2 ways to strengthen it. And then, as a small group, come up with 3 ways that you agree on that would be better. And then figure out who's gonna share it. So there's a marker at each one. There are 2 sheets. The feedback on process is for the first conversation, and underneath it, there's a feedback on the press release.
There's only Alan out the, she's on the,
Is it Mel?
no.
Mel?
Oh, I'm sorry.
So you're good. So you're good.
Is the press release just this first page or all 3?
All of it.
All of it?
It's all of it.
It would be all of it. So it's all that detail. So, I'm gonna check in with you all in 15 minutes. So, that means, in 15 minutes, I'm gonna find out whether you're still talking about the process, or you're on to the press release, or you're finished.